I've been a police officer in Mineral Wells, Texas, for about 5 years now. If you're wondering, Mineral Wells is about 50 miles west of Fort Worth and has a population of about 1,600. The people here are a typical salt of the earth type of people, God-fearing, hardworking, and kind. But something has always been a little off about them, almost like they're carrying a secret that no one is supposed to know. Mineral Wells has become a ghost town, no pun intended, after 7 p.m., and driving the streets at night can be downright creepy, even from the safety of my patrol car. In the 5 years I've been here, I've seen and heard some strange things I don't even believe myself at times. If I hadn't had my own strange experience when I was a child, I'd probably think I was crazy, but I'm not. The things that happen here are sometimes unexplainable, but they are real, and I'd like to relay one of my experiences to you. If you enjoy, perhaps I can tell you more, because I have a ton. To understand Mineral Wells, you have to understand its history. I learned most of this after I visited the local historical society, about 6 months after I moved here. Apparently, the town was settled in 1881 by a guy named J.A. Lynch. After Lynch had dug the first drinking well, he claimed that the strange tasting water cured his rheumatism. Miss Lynch claimed that the water had cured her arthritis as well. Mineral-enriched water had prime medicinal value in the 1800s, and soon the word got out about its quote-unquote healing properties. A second well was dug several years later, and then a third. It was out of this third well that a woman with dementia often drank. Guess what happened? Her dementia was miraculously cured. The local children started calling this third well the Crazy Water Well, and eventually the term crazy water was coined for this miraculous water that flowed from the earth. News about this crazy water had spread far and wide, and by the early 1900s, Mineral Wells had become the South's greatest health resort, with hundreds of mineral wells, bathhouses, spas, hotels, and the like. People traveled from all over the country in hopes of experiencing the healing power of the crazy water themselves. As you'd probably imagine, many of these visitors were old or infirm, and many never made it out of the town alive. Today, Mineral Wells is a shadow of its former self. While it still has some industry, it mainly operates as a tourism and retirement community. But don't let that fool you. In this town, Faulkner's famous quote holds a deeper meaning than those of us who have chosen to call it our home. The past is never dead. It's not even past. After I'd been on the force for about a month, I had my first strange experience with Mineral Wells. We had gotten a frantic 911 call about a dead body. I still remember the address. 200 Hubbard Street, the address of the Baker Hotel. I was working night shifts at the time, and the call came in at about 12:30 a.m. My partner and I were in the area, and it didn't take very long for us to get there. When we arrived, the 911 caller was gone, but the body was there, just as described. It turned out to be a young woman. She was splayed out on the red brick steps that led up to the front entrance. Her back had been obviously broken, and her head completely smashed. She was also totally nude. It was the first dead body I'd ever seen, and it was gruesome. You didn't have to be an expert to determine that she had fallen from a great height. I remember looking up to see if there were any balconies that she could have fallen from. There weren't, but there were plenty of windows, and since this was an old hotel, they didn't have the safety features that modern-day hotels have. In fact, Many of the windows were open. I later learned that the Baker Hotel had been shut down in the 70s, but no one would ever admit as to why. We had secured the scene and called in the investigative unit. The girl turned out to be 29-year-old Pamela Allen. She had been a resident of Mineral Wells all her life and worked as a manager at the local cafe. On the night in question, Pamela had been out with some girlfriends at the bar that was near the hotel. One of the girls who had been with her told the investigators that they had all been hanging out on the 7th floor of the hotel, drinking after the bars had closed, when they suddenly realized that Pamela was nowhere to be found. They began looking for her and found her clothes in a pile in one of the rooms, next to an open window. That's when they realized that she had fallen and called 911. There were only two bits of info they could offer. The first was that Pamela had been overheard saying that she needed to go meet Virginia, but none of them knew any friend of hers by that name. The second was that there were rumors in the town saying that she had an affair with the owner of the cafe she worked at, but none of them admitted to her ever seeing her with him. When I heard all of this, it seriously disturbed me. By all accounts, Pamela was a well-adjusted young woman and had no reason to kill herself. Why'd she do it? And why'd she take all of her clothes off before jumping? After the full investigation, I didn't hear much about the case again. The investigators thought the circumstances were odd, but odd things happen in Mineral Wells, and they had more pressing cases. It wasn't until about 5 months later, as I was poring over manuscripts at the Historical Society's archives, that I came across a passage that made the hair stand up on my neck. Here's what it said. One story involving the Baker Hotel revolves around a woman known as Virginia Brown, a resident at the hotel, who was the alleged mistress of T.B. Baker, the owner and builder of the hotel. According to the legend, Virginia was upset over the affair and drunkenly plunged to her death after jumping from the 13th window. Many of the visitors to the hotel before its closing in 1972 have reported seeing a bloody woman, sometimes wearing a red dress and sometimes nude, roaming the halls after midnight. This freaked me out, and I was about to nope right on out of there, but before I did, I realized that there was a reference to another document. It had been the hotel's ledger from the mid-1900s. I searched for Virginia Brown's name and found it. She had been a resident at that time, and there was a notation